Yo, what's up legends? Welcome back to another episode of Walkthrough Wednesday. Today we're going to jump into my track Frequency, which is my first track on Revealed in 2021, and it won't be the last. It's been a long time since I released on Revealed, and it's really good to be back. One of my favorite labels, really helped me out in the beginning of my career as well. It's part of Maddix's Lost DNA EP, which is a collection of big room techno tracks, a lot of which I play in my sets. And I'm honoured that he selected my track to release as part of his EP. So check it out if you haven't already. We're going to go into the project and basically pick it apart and see how I made it. I had a couple of questions from the guys in the Discord asking how I made the second drop, for example. Before we get into that, my selfie page has a new item up right now. It is the hardstyle track that we made. You can download that, take the sounds from it, do whatever you want. All you have to do is click the link in my description and you will find it on the page. In addition to that, this is for my Patreon subscribers. You will get a new sample pack tomorrow. As always, this is number 41 and it will be around this track, Frequency. There's some really hard samples in here and some sick midis as well. So if you're not a Patreon, why not? That's my question to you. Why not join the best Patreon community in EDM and get a new sample pack tomorrow, as well as all these tutorials and stuff like that. So let's jump into it. This is the drop. Drop 2. And the breakdown. So that is the overall gist of the song. What I wanted to do was make a club track. You know, when I made this track, things were starting to look up. You know, festivals, clubs were starting to open up again. So I need to have a lot of new music for my sets because I like to play as much new music from myself as I can. So this was one of those tracks that I knew I would play in a club, and I did play it in a club, and it sounds sick. I played it in Newcastle in digital, July actually, and it sounded really good. So let's go into the main element of the track. How did this track start? This track started with this effect. Pay attention to the rate here. What I've done is I've automated this particular knob to go from 30 Hertz all the way down, so the sound becomes short, like it starts really short and becomes more and more open. So let's just take a look at what happens there with the automation. So that was kind of a future wave inspired technique that I kind of heard, and I was like, I want to do a song like this. So I did that technique first, and then the rest of the track just kind of wrote itself. So with this kind of technique, what else did I do? So right there it sounds good, but it doesn't sound amazing, right? So I added an endless smile to make it open up even more with the reverb as well. As you can see, it's making a big difference. We've got the pitch as well. Again, it just added something different, which I don't know why I did it, but it sounded sick, and I was like, yeah, I'm keeping this. Might have been an accident, to be honest. We've got some other elements here. Now, it's been a while since I opened the project, so I believe these are all for this. This stuff you don't have to pay attention to. I think I had an effector on here. That's why it says FX. The effector plugin, but I think I took it off. I do believe. Also, to make it a smooth transition, I put a filter on it. I didn't want to just start this thing instantly because it would sound strange, as you can hear. Rather have a smoother transition than that. So that transition's a really good thing you can do even if you're a big room producer. These transitions really catch labels' eye and also DJs as well, because when you play something like this, it gets the crowd guessing a little bit. They're used to the pre-drop fill and a drop. They're not used to this kind of thing too much. That's why Future Rave does so well with these kind of techniques. We've got basic sweeps here. We've got to pick the energy up in this section. It's kind of like a build up, so we want sweeps. Bit of atmosphere as well. That really helps with the transition into the drop, and it just makes the drop hit harder. We've got an impact as well. Again, all about the transition. Transitions are super important in this kind of music, you know. Everything needs to be smooth. So in that section, there's really not too much going on. If you're going to do this kind of thing in your tracks, just make sure you play with the rate, the sample rate, and it will get smaller and smaller. I do this with direct wave, but within Serum it's a lot smoother. When you do it with a one-shot sample, it's not as smooth and it's like jittery. So with this, it's really smooth if you find a good preset. Shout out to Sound Factory. This is one from their old Future Rave pack, lead number 1, and that's what we used in the drop. So we come to the drop. This is the drop lead. So what is this lead made up of? As we said before, the Future Rave lead. Now what I've done with the rate is I've left it a little bit. So the rate originally was this, I think. So that was fully open. However, what I did is I left it on this number. I think it was 4. So it's a bit shorter, but it also has that double note. So it goes dud, 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 dud. As you can see, it's got that extra note at the end of the melody, and it just gave something extra to the track, which I wanted to keep. It's quite snappy as well. Let's go on to the processing after we've double checked the next lead, because this is quite an important layer as well. This one just provides depth to the song. To be honest, it's not a sound I would ever use as a main lead. However, as a backup lead, it really fits. So the processing for those, each lead is processed slightly different. So we have the main lead, which is on 1, which is handy. So this is the main lead processing. It's not as in-depth as what I do now. It's literally the bog standard thing I was doing in the past, you know, Camel Crusher, Blood Overdrive. I did push the boat out a little bit with the Isotope Trash. I think it's the clip control. I'm using a lot more of the saturation aspect now. Use Decapitator as well, with the Beefy preset, which is just really distorting the sound even more, but not too much to the point where it's like not to the point where it's grainy or just over saturated, over distorted. It's a nice amount of distortion, as you can hear. Makes the sound more warm, and I like that rather than a thin sounding lead. We've got an EQ doing some crazy stuff there. Nice little boost in the highs and focusing on the mids quite a lot. Not too much low end taken away. I assume that comes later. We have a little bit of stereo width just to make it a little bit wider, because we've got a lot of stuff down the center in the mono field. Another EQ boost in the mids and the highs, obviously wasn't happy, and another one at the end, which is just typical me. But as you can see, I kind of got there in the end. This is the amount of low end taken away here. I assume I haven't done any in this one. No. So the low end, I've left quite a lot of low end in the sound because there wasn't that much. It was quite a mid-high focused sound, to be honest. So I didn't really need to take that much away, and it kind of fit with the bass line. So if you find the bass line here, the main bass line, as you can see, they're not clashing. So I didn't need to take any more low end away from it. What I've done is linked it into a lead bus. So I've got all of these things and also all of these things affecting that lead sound. So we have Arts Acoustic Reverb with a linked controller. All you need to do with that is link to controller, select the peak, and then all you need to do is click inverted and click accept. And then your peak controller will detect the peaks and not play reverb. See, when the lead plays, the reverb comes back. It gets dialed back so that the lead can be more clean, and when the gap is there, the reverb then fills that gap. Fruity Delay 2. provides a lot of depth to the sound, makes it really feel wide and more full. We've got Inner Smile effector as well. Not sure if I use the effector at all. We'll have to double check that later on. We've got a compression as well at the end, trying to keep everything tight. We've also got Transient Master because I wanted to make the sound more clicky, more punchy. And also more tight as well. That's why usually I'm using the attack, but I'm also bringing the sustain down as well, so it makes it punchier but also shorter, which gives the effect that it's more energetic and punchy. So that's why I like to use that. Been using it for a long time now. Not so much anymore, but I do time to time like to get that extra click on my leads. So that's the main lead and the main lead bus. We also have that other lead that we talked about, which is on number 54, Camel Crusher on that one, and a Pro Q, which is taking more of the low end away because that one probably clashed, and I've linked that in to the leads bus as well. So both those sounds EQ'd differently, but also go into the same channel and have stuff on the same sounds, at the same VST, sorry. So we have a big gap here, right? What was I going to do in this gap? I'm not going to leave it empty. I want to exaggerate the reverb like crazy here, so that's why I've drawn up an automation of Arts Acoustic here. So we start here and we really exaggerate the reverb. And then I bring it back down for when the lead plays again, so there's no kind of reverb like an overspill of reverb. I want to keep it quite tight and quite controlled. So that's why I have this automation here. In the second part we don't have that automation because I have extra notes. And as you can see, I have an automation there, so it goes duh, 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 so it kind of pitches up. It's way more fun than having this. It's just something cool, and it makes a difference in my opinion. It just adds to the coolness of the lead sound as well. So without the leads, we have kick and bass. So how did I make this kick and bass? So we start with a big heavy techno kick because this was a techno big room track. You know, I always had that idea with this song. This is the huge kick. It's a hard techno kick, which I have boosted with parametric EQ, just bringing the overall gain of the sound up because I wanted it to be louder in the mix. We have an EQ as well, which I believe is for the breakdown, where I kind of reduce the low end in the sound, but we'll get to that in a second. Apart from that, there's no real processing. Added a top kick as well. See how much sharper this kick gets, and I love how sharp this kick actually is. We have a knock as well, which I like to use. See how much more attack this actual kick has, and that is literally it for the kick. 3 main elements. Now we have the bass line, which comprises of this, an old Gabba sound, which I thought was just really cool and really like old school. We've got an EQ on this, just getting rid of the lows and trying to boost some frequencies that I wanted to shine through. We've got a sub bass from Meant to Be, my track with Reese Low. It's a really low sub, and I thought it would work really well in here underneath the other sub, which is in here. So we have this sound, which is an acid sound on the offbeat, paired with this. You've got a nice sub, and you've got a nice mid layer as well, and this one has some nice highs on it. Then we also have this techno gate, which really adds to the techno feel of the kick, and I think that's such a great sound. We also have this offbeat as well, which is a crazy sound. which is a percussion sound that I used G-Tune to find out what key it was in, and I also EQ'd it accordingly, taking out some of those mid frequencies. It's all about trying to make it all fit within the puzzle, basically. So if we listen to the kick and bass without that techno gated kick, this one, let's see how it sounds. Makes a massive difference. It kind of plays on that offbeat more, so it makes it sound more bouncy and more rhythmic, basically. So that's why I added that. We have 2 little toms as well, some cool techno toms, no processing on those, just panned a little bit to the right so they have their own space. And that is pretty much the simplicity of this first drop. Got the screech from Nexus as well, which is a sound I used to use all the time. Don't use it anymore. It's from EDM6 and it's part of the intro actually, and I found this screech within that intro. I went to the layers and turned everything off apart from the FX and just kept that. That's why it's drawn in a long pattern like this. I'm only telling you about it now because I'm not using the sound anymore, so go crazy on that. It sounds really good though, and it's a great little filler. So in the second part of the drop, we need to pick the energy up. So what do? We add drums. Now I wanted it to sound techy here, so I wanted to have those drums. This is a loop which I just chopped up. Got some white noise as well, and offbeat acid as well, which has been processed a little bit, mids and highs, which is what I tend to do a lot with these kind of sounds. And another hi-hat, a more sharp techno hi-hat altogether. It sounds like this. The energy is much more intense than this, for example. So you can see an acapella here. I originally made this track with a German acapella, the Eins Drei Polizei vocal on top, and it sounded sick, but it was going to be too hard to get the clearance on that, so I just removed it. So this part actually had the vocal on, sounded really good. However, when I took the vocal away, it was just too empty. So then I had to think about what I was going to do here, because it just felt too basic. So I added these screeches in. Which is a screech. I think it might be from Nexus, but I bounced it out, so I had more control over it because it was parts I didn't like, as you can see with the automation there. And it just really fills that gap perfectly. It keeps the energy going, it adds extra sound design, and it just does the trick. We have this acid ARP as well. Which is really good for the energy. Again, everything that I'm adding here is just to increase that energy. Now I've added an endless smile so I can tail it off more gently, so it doesn't just end suddenly. So as you can see, it just tails off nicely into the breakdown. Which brings us on to the breakdown. This is a very, very basic breakdown, but really does the trick. It has that old school feel, which is what I want. I wanted that old school trancey feel to it. So we carry everything into the breakdown. I'll take off all the synth sounds and you'll hear what we have. I noticed this was quite a techno thing to do, so what I did is I kept the kick going into the breakdown and I just faded it away. You saw the EQ before where I take away the low end, and that's what that automation is there for. We're just going to gradually remove the low end as the breakdown progresses, because we don't want a big dirty kick in there. That's for the drop only. So everything just gets faded away. You've got the hi-hats from the breakdown, those get faded away, volume just comes down with an automation. You've got the acid sound gets taken away with a filter. Everything just dies away while the break synths come up. So you'll hear in the chords, the chords are being introduced gradually. Same for the other sounds. This is a sample, old school vocal. This is like a real old hard dance sound that I used in We Are the Ravers, for example. And I'm introducing that slowly as well. So we've got the chords and this vocal sound just getting introduced very, very subtly. Then we have the main sound, the main synth, which I open off the cutoff. A very, very trancey thing to do with a trance pluck. I'm just going to open off this cutoff here. So it goes from a pluck to a lead. So that pluck is just going to get opened up. Again, this is similar to the first drop build up where we've got that. That's another cool thing to do, open off the cutoff. It just shows more diversity in your production ability, I guess, rather than just having a basic filter and stuff like that. EDM nowadays is very focused on these little tricks and the sound design, just not just making a good song, you know. So we have that one. We have this also. Which is a serum sound, which is actually one of the main sounds in the break climax, which we will get to now. As you heard, I kept the drop lead in the breakdown there, because with the transition, sometimes you can make a drop and make a breakdown and they just sound completely different. So if you keep the drop lead tailing off into the break, it can make them sound gelled together. So because I had the Eins, Zwei, Polizei vocal in, I wanted to have more of that like atmosphere in there. So I tried to look for like Berlin sounds. You know, Berlin is a very big place for techno and stuff. But the club they have, I can't remember, is it Bergin? Something like that. Anyway, I wanted to have Berlin street noise in there just to make it sound even more authentic, but I couldn't find it anywhere in Splice, so I just had to find some hot dog vendor sound design, which sounds weird, but it actually worked really well. So this is Foley atmosphere, which is real life sounds, and I think it just provides something extra to a track, especially in EDM synth.